Hello, I'm Joseph Morrison of Razor Sharp Consulting. The first part of our video series deals with leadership. I've seen some of the best, most needed in my view, and earnest efforts falter and fail because the leaders that are in place, staff and volunteer alike, simply do not have the necessary skills, tools, training, or access to resources that will enable them to be effective. I've seen more than one example of how nonprofit leaders with good intentions falter and fail because they simply didn't understand their proper roles and responsibilities, or because they didn't have the ability to overcome simple obstacles or to make decisions. It's no wonder that when the real challenges come along in the organization, at worst it collapses, and at best it simply remains stagnant. The old adage is true: the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But great nonprofits don't rely on good intentions, but they're instead flush with talented and skilled leadership that can and do turn those intentions into actions which propel the organization forward. The right leaders make all the difference in the world. For the purposes of our series, when I refer to leadership, I'm primarily referring to the board of directors with key staff involvement. An effective board committed to a purpose and skilled in governance and guided by effective vision is perhaps the greatest asset of any not-for-profit organization. While dedicated and talented staff and/or frontline service volunteers are also a critical part of the team, their time and energy would be wasted without the focus, direction, and resources that a good board provides. Although most people recognize that a good board of directors can be an important part of a nonprofit, the reality is that many more people, especially those in high places within charitable organizations, usually underestimate the role and value of a good board. In fact, some people think that a board is simply there to help establish or run the organization, periodically stepping in when things go wrong, or just to provide advice and guidance when they're asked to do so. Then there are those who actually overestimate the importance of a board, often expecting this group of people to do what would more effectively be done by a paid staff. The bottom line, though, is that neither scenario is in the best interest of the organization. When a board is underestimated, it's not allowed to play the roles that it needs to play. When it's overestimated, the organization usually suffers for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that the staff, if there are any, is not expected to develop and to do its job, a job which no board can do as well as paid staff. Although both of these are indeed a problem, underestimation is a bigger problem because it's more prevalent in the nonprofit sector. Perhaps the best way to illustrate the importance of a good board is by giving concrete examples. But before I do this, I want to emphasize that an assumption is being made that the board that has been selected is indeed a good board. By a good board, I mean a group of people who are personally interested in the problems the nonprofit was established to address, and that this is a group of people who have the credentials, experience, and reputation that is needed to take the organization to where it needs to be. To that end, board members should be people who hold high positions in the community, either through education, achievements, or status within businesses or other nonprofits, for example, owners and executives, educators, members of the clergy, politicians, lawyers, accountants, and other professionals. Having established that this is the case, we can look at a number of characteristics or qualities which illustrate why boards are so supremely important. For starters, a board which should be unpaid can step in when the organization is heading in the wrong direction or is being mismanaged by the appointed officers, starting with the executive director, who should preferably be paid and not be a voting member of the board, with the only exception being that that person is also one of the founders, and even in that case, it's best if they have no vote to avoid conflicts of interest. In this sense, the board is the conscience of the organization, the part that is supposed to provide and uphold accountability, which is one of the reasons funding agencies pay close attention to who is on the board. Beyond this, a board represents the organization, like a banner or a flag represents a country or a club, telling potential supporters, hey, we're here to make sure that whatever support you give us will be well used. We're here to make sure that this organization does what it says it's supposed to do and is true to its mission, to the best of its ability. To this end, a board can be crucially important in helping nonprofits obtain the funds they'll be asking for and that they supposedly need. And it's no wonder then that the grading system that many government agencies and private foundations use to evaluate grant proposals includes a section on how good the board appears to be. It's been said, in fact, that who is on the board of directors will often be one of the key components that decides whether an organization gets a grant or not. Beyond clout and money, a good board provides a number of other important things to a nonprofit. The first, perhaps, is technical expertise, which is why most boards usually contain members representing all segments of the economy. People like lawyers and accountants and healthcare professionals and insurance executives. This is not to say, however, that boards negate the need to hire the services of those types of professionals, at least not in a well-run organization. Ideally, a board is there to supervise, as opposed to actually running the organization or directly dealing with the day-to-day events and circumstances, what may be called the small picture. That scenario should, in most instances, be left to the paid staff, more specifically to the executive director. What the board provides is broad and general management guidance. In other words, decisions dealing with the big picture. In addition to this, a board helps to select and assist the executive director, directly holding that person responsible, helps in the making of long-range plans for the organization, oversees the performance of the organization as a whole, makes sure that everything the organization does is in keeping with the mission statement, helps the organization to get the money and support that it needs to develop its programs and initiatives, makes sure that the nonprofit uses the funds it gets responsibly and efficiently, and helps to set the tone for what the organization is about, where it's going, what is acceptable and what is not within the organization, and how best to maintain and, if necessary, improve the organization's image and reputation in the community. In a nutshell, it is the responsibility of the paid staff to run the organization and to directly implement its programs and goals. The board, on the other hand, is there to keep an eye on the overall performance of the nonprofit, making sure that the goals are met and that justification for the existence of the organization is carefully documented for any interested party to see. And in general, the staff does not have time being busy putting out fires and performing basic chores, nor the expertise to do what the board does. The board, on the other hand, not being on the premises from day to day, also cannot step into the shoes of the staff, which is why in the best run nonprofits, both entities are essential, but they play totally different roles. Metaphorically speaking, the staff are the firefighters who actually fight the fires. The board as a whole is the fire chief, who stands on the sidelines carefully observing and mapping out the best way to put his or her personnel and equipment to use. Now, for these reasons, we need to get serious about recruiting people who are deeply committed to our mission, effective in raising funds, and who have the leadership skills needed for sustainable growth. It's better in the long run to err on the side of brutal honesty rather than seduction. Recruiting, developing, and retaining appropriate individuals to serve in board roles is a difficult and time-consuming job. Healthy organizations are willing to make a major investment of the time and effort in these activities to build a strong organization. The building board cycle for the lifespan of the organization includes evaluating the current and future leadership needs of the organization, recruiting board members with the necessary qualities, developing board members so that they become effective organizational leaders, and sustaining board members' interest and commitment. Let's take a look at each of these things in turn by learning how to recruit for success.